Hello YouTube, it's Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to the 5th season of Sexism in Movies and TV. Now, there are many reasons as to why I do this review show. One of which is the portrayal of men in the media is downright horrific. It's an insult. It's why most kids think their dads are idiots. But when it comes to women, they get the get out of horrible portrayal free card. And although I do review a lot of shows and movies that are aimed at a mature adult audience, most of what I review is aimed at a young audience. And yes, I kind of do blame shows like Adventure Time and Loud House and the bulk of what usually appears on this show as being the reason that teenage boys have such low self-esteem. Which is actually kind of true when you think about it from a psychological perspective. When every single portrayal, well, almost every single portrayal of men and boys on TV and in movies is negative, of course these teenage boys, when they first hit puberty, are going to have horrible self-esteem. So, in that regard, I know that I have a noble cause when I rip apart these televised pieces of shit. So anyways, on with the review. Hello, in this episode of Sexism in Movies and TV, I'll be reviewing the Loud House episode, Affair to Remember. Now, one thing that really pisses me off about the sexism in movies and TV nowadays is the level of hypocrisy. I mean, you wouldn't believe how many cartoons, and when I say cartoons, I mean the bulk of them are aimed at kids, will essentially have stories saying, it's okay when the girls do it, but not when the boys do it. It's been something that's been plaguing American television for years, and what do you know? Just like the last episode of this show I beat up, Affair to Remember was also directed by series creator Chris Savino. I'm pretty sure this guy really does hate men, but judging on the episode I'm attacking, he might have some other issues that I'm not saying this directly, I'm saying he might, but he might have some issues that is subconsciously coming out through his work. Subconsciously. Okay, so this episode starts off with Bobby going to Lori with tickets for a monster truck rally. But Lori does not want to go. And this scene is extremely hypocritical. After everything he's done for her, all the gifts he's given her, all the dates he's paid for, all the things he's made in her likeness, she can't go to a single monster truck rally for him after everything he's done for her. I mean, come on. Even the look on his face should make it clear to anyone that he's aware of how hypocritical Lori is. And the episode wants you to side with this spoiled brat. Okay, so when Bobby and Lincoln get back from the monster truck rally, they had a really good time, and it was apparently a male bonding experience. Later, on another date, Lori wants Bobby to rub lotion on her back. But then is covered in sand when Lincoln rides up in his bike because, well, I can only assume Bobby invited him along because they were getting along so well. And then, on their next date, Bobby actually did invite Lincoln along, and they have a food fight. Okay, so later, Lori is venting to her sisters about how Bobby says that Lincoln is like the little brother he never had. And yes, I am fully aware that this is before we learned anything about Bobby's home life, but when you grow up in a broken home with one sister, I mean, it's gotta be tempting to try and find out what it would be like if you had a little brother to spend the time with. Someone that you actually know will most likely have the same interests that you do. So then, Lori decides to use Clyde and make Bobby jealous. Bobby invited Lincoln along on his next date with Lori, who only dragged Clyde along to make Bobby jealous. I know I was repetitive, but while Lincoln and Bobby were having a great time at the fair, Lori was trying and failing repeatedly to make Bobby jealous. Lori sees the tunnel of love and knows that it's her last resort and her last chance to make this guy jealous. She gets on it with Clyde. Bobby does see it, and he goes on the toilet bowl with Lincoln, which leads to Lori crying, and some guy asks her if she was just dumped. She doesn't know if she was, but everything she went through, she kind of brought on herself, and I will explain how right after the review. Both Lincoln and Bobby see this. They play a joke that makes it look like him and Lincoln are dating, and they break up, and then he goes on the tunnel of love with Lori. They have an epilogue that says that Lincoln and Bobby still can hang out, and he views Lincoln as his little brother, and the episode ends. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the major hypocrisy within this episode. And that's the fact that Lori is completely the cause of every bit of the conflict. She is the reason all of this happens. I know that's a bit obvious, but here's the thing. She couldn't do one thing for her boyfriend after he spent 1.5 seasons busting his ass to make her happy. She couldn't do something to make him happy, or do something he wanted to for a change? The answer to that question is no. And the minute that possibility rears its head, she dumps it on Lincoln. And then, when Bobby realizes that he likes spending time with Lincoln, she has the gall to get pissed off about it and feel like Lincoln stole Bobby from her. And you know what? I'm just gonna get the elephant out of the room. Lori is having a scene because she didn't want to do something her boyfriend wanted, made Lincoln take her place, and is now acting like a little baby whose ball was taken away from her because the ball liked Lincoln too. Lori in this episode is unbelievably stuck up and spoiled rotten to the point where she needs Bobby's attention and feels she's the only one worthy of his attention. And you're probably at this point wondering where the hypocrisy truly lies. And that is in the fact that we would never get a storyline like this if the genders were reversed, or even on the Casa Grandes. Also, the final bit of hypocrisy that I'm going to end this review on is the fact that Lori, this whole thing started because Lori didn't want to do something her boyfriend wanted to do. He found out he liked hanging out with Lincoln, started ignoring Lori, which, let me just say, there's nothing wrong with that, because Lori's the kind of girl who truly thinks dating her is a privilege. If this episode ended with Lori learning the lesson that Bobby could use some free time and can't spend his entire life with it revolving around her, this episode would have had a purpose. That's it. Review over. I'm done.